Let me give you this. The Lord gave me this a while back, and it just comes in line with what he shared with me a few months ago about the woman at the well. I'm going to show you how Christ dealt with individuals, and he had to deal with culture. See, oftentimes we just focus on dealing with individuals, but we forget about there's a culture that's influencing that individual. Did that make sense? We got to understand that there's a lot of things that people do, not because so much of the devil per se, but there's a culture that's influencing them. There's a culture out there that wants to influence our children to make us think that certain things are okay, but it's not doctrinal and it's anti-Christ. Let me give you an example. So Jesus went and he addressed the woman at the well. He said, go get your husband. She said, I want some of this water that you're talking about that I will never thirst again. His next statement was, go get your husband. What was he dealing with? The individual. He said, now, if you want to partake of this water and drink it that you may never thirst again, first of all, I got to deal with the individual. He said, what I have, you can't get if you don't deal with you. And see, we think that we're going to drink of this water that Christ was talking about without dealing with us. He said, before we go any further and try to get any deeper and try to get into all this, theological theories and different things, he said, no, let's deal with you first. Where is your husband? Go get him. So now he begins to deal with her. Her response was, I don't have one. You know what he said? You right. You done had 5. Now, I taught this years ago, and see how y'all were looking when I said you got 5. Immediately, you pointed your finger at the woman. Because she's been called a whore for years. Because he said, you had 5, and the one you got is not yours. So immediately we got sermons that preach how bad she was. True enough, what she was doing was wrong, but how did she get to that state? See, we just read stuff and run with it. It's the same thing with your life. Some people just look at it and they run with it. We look at the man on the corner and run with it and say, shame on him, he ought not. But have you ever wondered how they got there? Yeah, we know it's sin, but have you ever looked much deeper into certain things that some people, because of their surroundings, the way that they were raised, because mama beat me, because mama was on crack, because daddy was an alcoholic, because my uncles molested me. Have you ever thought about how they got there? Instead of just looking down your nose at everybody, Jesus had compassion when he looked at folks. That means he looked deeper than what they were doing. He looked at their hearts and wanted to know, how can I fix them? So while everybody else was shunning this woman at the well and she had this bad reputation amongst the people, Jesus took the time to stop and sit down and talk to her. If you just take the time to stop and talk to people, I don't care how they dress, I don't care how they smell, I don't care what kind of habits or addictions they have, take the time to sit down and have compassion and just have a dialogue with somebody, and you'll find out some things that you assumed wasn't even right in the first place. Everybody that's in sin don't want to be in sin. There are some people that want a way out, but they're just waiting on Jesus to meet them at the well. But because we're too tied up in church, in our culture, we're not going to the well. We're going to conferences and we're going to seminars. I'm going to preach today because I'm on the road. This is my 3rd day straight, just about. We're not at the well, we in church. We're not at the well, we're in our feelings and in our culture and how we do things. The disciples was off buying something to eat, trying to get some provisions in the natural. But Jesus wasn't hungry physically. He said, my meat is to do the will of the Father that sent me. Do the will of the one that sent me. He said, that satisfies me. What satisfied Jesus is to go to the well and find people there with issues. And not jump to conclusions, but have a dialogue, minister. Sometimes you help folks by just talking to them. Listen to what's on their heart. Don't jump to conclusions about what they got on and who they're hanging with and I just don't mean I don't fool. No. Jesus said this, I must needs go through a forbidden place, Samaria. He said, y'all might not think it's all right or cool to go through there. He said, but I got to go through there. By him even doing that, getting ahead of myself a little bit, but by him even doing that, going through Samaria, now he wasn't dealing with just an individual. He was dealing with a culture, a society. Because society says, don't fool with her. Society says don't fool with women, especially a Samaritan woman. But as he was dealing with the individual, he was dealing with the culture or the society. Y'all got all those 5 things? This attitude right here, it was not just a part of the culture, but what happened is it started infiltrating every part of life. Everybody in Corinth, this attitude started infiltrating every part of their life. Watch this, including their pursuit of religion. Let me show you. I'm going to bring it in our terms. Including in what church they was looking for. They was looking for a church, not that would make them morally better, but they was looking for a church that lined up and matched their culture. A culture of individualism, a culture of wealth, a culture of bragging, a culture of having it going on. So they weren't looking for a church that would make them better morally, but they was looking for a church that would make them feel like they had it going on. A church that would let me sing, a church that would, where I knew folks had money, a church where all the dignitaries went, a church where, where I'm the biggest in the back, a church where they had some real good music, a church where, and it was all about entertainment and individualism and self-indulgence. Every aspect of the culture that they lived in, it infiltrated every part of their lives, including the type of church, the type of religion that they were looking for. So here's the church of Corinth that Paul established, and they preaching and teaching sacrifice, denying yourself. Y'all see the picture? Presenting your body as a living sacrifice, giving, taking the back seat, putting others before you. All this culture all around us. And you're going to talk about taking up my cross. You're going to talk about fasting, going without eating. You're going to talk about going to church with my show on, when the game is on, when I got this to do and I got that to do. See, in a culture like this, 6 days ain't long enough. See, when you're in a culture that's just so indulged in self, even 6 days is not enough to do what you want to do. I won't even honor the Sabbath. I won't even honor the fact that God said go to church. I won't even honor the fact that I need to go to Bible study and prayer, because I'm in a culture of individualism. I'm about doing what I want to when I want to. I'm about self-pleasure. I can't even do it in a little bit. 2 hours bother me in church. One night of Bible study bothered me. Y'all see where I'm at? Because the culture has influenced me. Not God, the culture has. The culture done got me. It ain't the devil, the culture done got you. The way they doing it done got you. The way they teach it done got you. The way they showing off done got you. And it's the way other people are doing, the way they're indulging. It is the culture that has influenced us. And now the things of God, because of what he requires, because of his standards, we don't look for a God place. We look for a place of culture. Listen to this. The motivation for participating in organized religions, in other words, church, the motivation for going to church was the promise that it held for health, wealth, social standing. If you come over here, you're going to get a job. If you come over here, you're going to get a promotion. If you come over here, you're going to get everything you want. And see, because the true gospel is seemingly not working for us, we are adjusting ourselves to the culture. So we're not telling people that when you serve the Lord, you got to suffer sometimes. Psalms 138, verses 7 and 8. See, we're not telling people, because we're in fear of being in contrast with the culture and being contrast of what's popular. And we're losing the masses preaching the gospel. We're losing popularity preaching Jesus and him crucified. We're losing because the culture is influencing people. If you come on the Lord's side, it ain't about your clothes. It's not about the way you dress. It's not about being flashy. It's not about bragging and boasting. This is why we see in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, as he's trying to influence them not to be persuaded, he said, we preach not ourselves. He said, I know what they're doing on the corners. I'm going to just go ahead and preach, y'all, because y'all tired. He said, I know what they're doing in the culture. He said, but we don't preach ourselves up in here. I don't know what they're doing out there, but we don't preach bragging and boasting up in here. It's not by might nor by power, but everything that's done in here is done by the Spirit of the Lord. It's not about individualism. It's not about how much money you got, but it's about making sure that your soul is right with the Lord, or you're going to spend yourself eternity in hell if you don't get your moral standards up to God's standards. It don't matter how much money or how much clothes or how many cars you have. And what I like about Paul is he wasn't afraid to preach against the culture. He wasn't afraid to go against the culture. And what's happening with the remnant, those of us who are still preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, we're seeing this remnant. We're seeing this remnant. And there's a struggle that's even harder today than it was yesterday against the current of culture. Culture says it's all right. Culture says it's all right for same-sex marriage. Culture says it's all right, and it's infiltrating the church. We're pushing against the current. Let me give you a definition real quick. You don't have to write this down because, sometimes the Holy Spirit just stopped me. Sometimes we talk about the gospel, and sometimes we don't know what the gospel is. Preaching the gospel. The gospel is simply this. Christ died and was buried and was resurrected. Y'all see that? The gospel. I just gave you the gospel in a nutshell. How's that in a nutshell? Because if you preach in the gospel, that gospel should affect your life. You should die. You should die. You should be buried. And you should be raised up anew. So if that's not happening, that's not the gospel. If all you're doing is getting more money, that's not the gospel. If the only thing is changing is your status in society, that's not the gospel. Christ died, he was buried, and he was risen again. He was raised from the dead. That's the gospel. So when you preach the gospel, that should be the results of the gospel being preached. That should be the motivation behind the gospel being preached. People should be dying spiritually. They should be dying to themselves. You should be dying to that attitude. You should be dying to those evil ways. You should be dying. And not only dying, but they ought to put you in a grave. If you are still full of individualism, if you're still full of pride, if it's all about coming to church to see how God can bless me and give me this and give me that, give me, you ain't died yet, baby. Because when you have an understanding of what the true gospel is, you understand that I can still prosper and go beyond material things and live with Christ. See, the Corinthians lived in a culture that did not put religion above culture, but they saw religion as a part of culture. Y'all see that? They didn't look at religion as something that would take you higher. The Bible says, set your affections on things above. See, the gospel says change your affections. It should take your affections to high. It should be more than just about money. And people think when you preach this that you against prosperity, you against it. No. We preach get your house in order. When me and my wife it's a good analogy. Me and my wife was getting our house in order and we're cleaning it up. And we was cleaning out them closets, and it's coming now time for you to clean out those closets again. And we take all the summer clothes and bring them out, and we get ready to take all the winter clothes and put them in the containers and put them in the closet. You know what we're doing? Getting our house in order. We didn't throw away the winter clothes. We just put them in the closet because they're not as important as having summer clothes. It's the same thing. We got the wrong stuff in the closet and we got the wrong stuff out the closet. Now here comes Jesus. Overlooking the content, what was before them. Jesus Christ, the Son of God, asking him for a sign. In other words, do what the culture is doing, Jesus. If you say you the son of God, give me a car. You say you the son of God, well, pay my light bill, pay my house bill, but fix my family, fix this, fix that, fix it, Jesus, just like you said you would. And you know what he said? Like he's saying nowadays, because of the culture only wants experiences, performances, entertainment, proof. There's nothing wrong with that stuff, but if that's all you're trying to live by and not content. See, I want the content and the experience. I want the content and I still believe he's a healer. But if by chance I don't have an experience, I still got the content. We like this entertainment, we like this interaction, we like this flamboyant stuff, not because it's giving us anything, but it keeps my attention fleshly wise. And then when you get a sermon or something like, that has some content to it, you say, how was church today? It was all right. It was all right. I mean, pastor ain't hot engine, anybody shouting in my phone? Like, nah. Church, we're saying, nah, church didn't line up with culture today. Church didn't really line up with culture today. It's, it didn't really line up with culture. They didn't sing my favorite song, pastor didn't really say nothing clever. It was just an all right sermon, it was okay. But it wasn't nothing like Atlanta Housewives. Y'all see what I'm talking about? See, we got that recorded. We got the DVR set for that. We got the DVR set for entertainment. Because we are so in tune with the culture, but we're out of sync with the kingdom. We are very in tune with culture. But I decree and I declare, as shepherd and pastor of this church, as a man of God, not just a pastor of this church, but as a man of God, period. That means that my title doesn't stop just because I'm in this church. It is my mandate from God, as he gave this mandate to Paul. You got to pull them people out of that culture. You got to pull them people out of that. And you know what I like about what he said, Brother Redmond? He encouraged the people as he was doing in 2 Corinthians chapter 4. He said, now, if they don't receive the gospel, it's all right. Read the rest of it when you get home. Probably about verse 2, 3, or 4, or 5. Just read all of it. He said, if they don't receive the gospel, if they still just enter their culture, he said, it's no fault of the gospel. He said, there's a veil. Some of y'all done read 2 Corinthians chapter 4. He said, there's a veil that's over their eyes. So if the gospel is hidden to anybody, it's hidden to those who have been blinded by Satan. Y'all know what he means by that? He's not talking about per se, I'm putting quotations, he's not per se talking about the devil as in the devil himself, but the influence. So when we say the devil, when we say the world, we're talking about the influences, which overall is overseen by the devil. He said that if it's foolishness, if it's nothing to anybody, it's to those who have been blinded. The veil is over their eyes. Satan has blinded them with the culture. I'm telling y'all, I feel in my spirit that this is one of the most important sermons I ever preached or taught. I just feel this in my spirit. Because I've always wondered, you have those yearning questions as to why we're not getting where we need to be. I'm talking about as a whole, the body. And the culture has influenced us. The culture has influenced comforts, ease, provisions, compromise. We have been so consumed by our society, by our culture, until it's almost drowning out the gospel. But Paul says, be encouraged, Craig. Ain't nothing wrong with the gospel. I'm telling you what he told me in my personal time. He said, keep on preaching the gospel, because there's nothing wrong. See, as a leader, as a pastor, if you start questioning the gospel because of the response of the people, you headed down the wrong way. Jeremiah, don't look at their faces. If you're looking at their faces, Jeremiah, you messing up the message. You're going to mess up the message looking at the responses of people. So he says this. He says, don't let their responses and how they receive it, don't let that change your message. There is nothing wrong with the gospel. I'm going to say that till I die. I don't care. Look at, I don't care, and I'm getting ready to pray. I do not care what the government says, what's politically correct, what people say, oh, that's boring, or that's this. I don't care how much people lay out of church, they lay out of Bible study, they lay out of prayer. I don't care. There is nothing wrong with the gospel. There's nothing wrong with the gospel. Ain't nothing wrong with the gospel. Ain't a thing wrong with it. I'm going to send this prayer. And it's almost like a, this is what I don't know if it's a wake-up call or a warning. I think it's a mixture of the two. It's a message of encouragement. It's a message of warning. It's a message of raise your awareness. Y'all don't let all of this, and I'm pointing at this because this is a symbol. All these clothes and houses and cars and all this, and who got the baddest church, and how long church is, how short church is, how do I feel comfortable when I come, do I do this and that and this, and all that's fine, y'all, but let's not let the culture start influencing our religion.